the so-called army of Satan, and its supposed preparation to attack Israel. This topic has sparked much debate among theologians, Bible scholars, and those interested in the events of the end times. While some see it as part of a symbolic narrative, others firmly believe it's a real event that will happen in the future. In this video we're going to explore what this army is, what the Bible says about a possible attack on Israel, and how this fits into the framework of prophecies concerning the end of the world. We'll also talk about how many people interpret these events in light of what's currently happening around the globe. So if you've ever wondered if there's more beyond what we can see, if there are spiritual forces behind the events unfolding on our planet, join me on this journey to discover the truth. 1. The battle between good and evil in the Bible. To understand the concept of Satan's army, we first need to look at the larger narrative of the ongoing battle between good and evil that runs throughout the Bible. From the beginning, Scripture speaks of a constant conflict between God and Satan, symbolizing the struggle between light and darkness, good and evil. In the book of Genesis, we see that Satan, in the form of a serpent, is the one who leads Adam and Eve into original sin. From that moment on, humanity is caught in a state of spiritual warfare. The Bible describes Satan as a cunning and powerful enemy who always seeks to destroy what God has created. Throughout the Bible, especially in the New Testament, Satan is portrayed as a being who has an army of demons at his disposal. These evil beings work to corrupt and oppose God's work in the world. And according to some interpretations of biblical prophecy, at the end of times, Satan will gather all his forces to launch a massive attack against God's people, symbolized by Israel. 2. Prophecies about the end of times. The idea that a demonic army led by Satan will attack Israel comes largely from biblical prophecies about the end times. One of the most discussed texts in this regard is the book of Revelation, also known as the book of the Apocalypse. This book is filled with symbols, visions, and prophecies about final judgment, the battle between good and evil, and God's eventual triumph over Satan. In Revelation 27-9, there's mention of a final battle in which Satan gathers the nations of the world to attack God's people. When the 1,000 years are completed, Satan will be released from his prison, and will come out to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together for the war. The number of them is like the sand of the seashore. And they came up on the broad plain of the earth, and surrounded the camp of the saints and the beloved city. In this passage, the beloved city is often interpreted as Jerusalem, and the camp of the saints as the people of Israel. According to this prophecy, in the last days, Satan will deceive the nations of the world and gather them to attack Israel. But, as we'll see later, this battle will not be the end, as God will intervene in a powerful way. 3. The figure of Gog and Magog. One of the key elements in this prophecy is the mention of Gog and Magog. Throughout history, there have been many interpretations of who or what these names represent. Some believe they refer to specific nations or leaders who will play a major role in the events of the end times. Others think they are symbols representing God's enemies in general. The first time Gog and Magog are mentioned in the Bible is in the book of Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39. Here, Gog is described as a leader who will come from a distant northern land and attack Israel in the last days. According to Ezekiel's prophecy, this attack will be devastating, but God will intervene and destroy Israel's enemies with a great catastrophe. The connection between Gog and Magog and Satan in Revelation has led many to believe that this is a prophecy about a future invasion of Israel led by evil forces under Satan's direction. According to this interpretation, Satan will use the leaders of the world and their armies to carry out this final attack on God's people. 4. Who makes up Satan's army? One of the most intriguing aspects of this theory is who exactly makes up Satan's army. In the Bible, Satan is described as the prince of this world, someone who has temporary authority over earthly kingdoms. This has led many to believe that Satan not only has a spiritual army of demons, but also the ability to influence nations and their leaders to carry out his plans. Indeed, throughout the biblical narrative, we see how entire nations have fallen under the sway of evil. From ancient empires that persecuted God's people to more recent regimes that have caused great suffering, many see in these earthly forces a manifestation of Satan's power in the world. According to some interpretations of the prophecies in the last days, Satan will use not only his army of demonic beings but also the political and military leaders of the world to attack Israel. These leaders will be deceived by Satan and convinced they are waging a just or necessary war, when in reality they are serving the purposes of evil. 5. The importance of Israel in biblical prophecies. Israel plays a central role in many end times prophecies. In the Bible, Israel is described as God's chosen people, and Jerusalem is repeatedly mentioned as the beloved city. Over the centuries, Israel has been the scene of numerous conflicts, reinforcing the idea that it is a crucial point in human history. In end times prophecies, Israel is seen as the place where the most significant events in the battle between good and evil will unfold. Jerusalem, in particular, is described as the setting for the final great battle between God and Satan. For those who believe in these prophecies, the constant unrest in the Middle East and attacks on Israel are seen as signs that the end is near. 6. Will the attack of Satan's army be a physical or spiritual war? A crucial question that arises is whether the attack of Satan's army will be a physical war, or if we are talking about a spiritual battle. In Revelation and other prophetic texts, symbolic language is often used to describe future events. This has led some to interpret the attack on Israel not as a literal war but as a spiritual conflict that will affect the whole world. In this view, Satan's army could represent the forces of evil working everywhere, trying to corrupt and destroy the followers of God. Instead of an army made up of physical soldiers, it would be a battle against ideas, ideologies, and spiritual powers that oppose divine truth. On the other hand, many believe the attack will be both spiritual and physical. In this sense, Satan is expected to use the nations of the world to wage an actual war against Israel, but with a deeper spiritual purpose, which is to destroy God's work on earth. 7. The outcome, divine intervention. Despite the severity of the attack mentioned in the prophecies, the outcome is always clear: God will intervene decisively to save his people and destroy Satan and his army. In the book of Revelation, after Satan gathers the nations to attack Israel, God descends with power and fire, defeating all enemies and establishing his eternal kingdom. This moment is known as the second coming of Christ, where Jesus returns to judge humanity and bring a new heaven and a new earth. According to the prophecy, Satan will be defeated once and for all and cast into the lake of fire, along with all those who followed him. 8. Modern interpretations of these prophecies. Today, these prophecies about Satan's army and the attack on Israel continue to be a topic of much discussion in religious, theological, and cultural circles. While many people interpret these prophecies literally, others see them as symbols of larger conflicts encompassing both the spiritual and moral realms. In the modern world, the ongoing political tension in the Middle East, particularly around Israel, has led some to believe that these prophecies are beginning to unfold. Since the creation of the State of Israel in 1948, the country has been at the center of numerous wars and international disputes, reinforcing the idea that Israel is a key location in end times events. 9. Israel in the current geopolitical context. For those who believe in the biblical prophecies about the end of the world, the current situation in the Middle East is of great interest. Throughout the 20th and early 21st centuries, we have seen how conflict in this region has intensified, with Israel constantly facing threats of war and destruction. From the Six-Day War in 1967 to more recent clashes with armed groups in Gaza and Lebanon, Israel has remained at the center of global attention. Many believers see these conflicts as the fulfillment of the prophecies that Israel will be attacked in the last days. According to this interpretation, the nations surrounding Israel could be part of Satan's army mentioned in Revelation. These forces could be preparing for a final assault on God's people as part of Satan's plan to destroy what God has promised to protect. 10. The signs of the end times. Another important element to consider in this context is the idea of the signs of the end times. Throughout the Bible, Jesus and the prophets speak of certain events and signs that will occur before the end. These include wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes, famines, and increasing immorality in the world. For those who believe in the imminent arrival of the end times, these signs are already present in today's world. The rise of natural disasters, the decline in moral values, and global political and economic instability are seen as indicators that the final battle between good and evil is approaching. According to some interpretations, the attack of Satan's army on Israel will be the culmination of these signs. It will be a time of great conflict, but also a time of hope, as divine intervention will put an end to evil once and for all, establishing God's kingdom on earth. 11. The Battle of Armageddon. Another key prophecy often associated with the attack of Satan's army is the Battle of Armageddon. This term comes from Revelation 16:16, where a final battle between the forces of good and evil is described. Armageddon is mentioned as the place where the armies of the world will gather to fight in the last days. For many biblical scholars, Armageddon represents the climax of the spiritual war between God and Satan. Some believe this battle will take place in the Valley of Megiddo, a real location in Israel that has been the scene of numerous battles throughout history. Others view Armageddon as a symbol of the final conflict between good and evil, which will take place across the entire world. Regardless of how it is interpreted, the Battle of Armageddon is closely tied to the idea that Satan will gather the nations to attack Israel. For believers, this battle represents Satan's last attempt to overthrow God's plan, but he will be decisively defeated. 12. What does the Bible teach about preparing for these events? One of the key messages found in the Bible regarding the events of the end times is the importance of being spiritually prepared. Jesus warns his followers to stay alert and vigilant, because no one knows the day or the hour when these events will occur. For many believers, this means living a life of faith, obedience, and trust in God. Though the idea of Satan's army and an attack on Israel may seem frightening, the Bible also reminds us that God is in control of all things. Even though Satan and his forces may cause great destruction and chaos, the final promise is that good will triumph over evil. 13. Hope in the midst of conflict. Despite the darkness that surrounds the prophecies of the end times, there is a message of hope that shines throughout the entire Bible. Though difficult times lie ahead, the final triumph of God over evil is assured. In Revelation 21, after the defeat of Satan, a new heaven and a new earth are described, where there will be no more death, sorrow, or pain. This is the hope that sustains believers amid the trials and tribulations they may face. Despite the enemy's attacks, the promise of eternity with God is a source of strength and comfort. The idea of a Satan's army prepared to attack Israel is one of the most fascinating and debated prophecies in the Bible. Whether interpreted literally or symbolically, the central message is clear: in the last days, there will be a great confrontation between the forces of good and evil. Satan will attempt to destroy God's people, but he will be ultimately defeated by divine intervention. Israel, as the epicenter of many of these prophecies, remains a place of great importance both spiritually and politically. The current events in the Middle East continue to capture the attention of those who believe we are living in the end times. Throughout this video, we've explored different interpretations of these prophecies and how they fit into the broader context of the spiritual battle between God and Satan. At the end of the day, regardless of how you view these events, the Bible's message is one of hope and victory for those who trust in God. If you enjoyed this video and want to continue learning more about biblical prophecies, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring the mysteries of the Bible and its relevance to our modern world. Thank you for joining us.